Welcome back. Today we are discussing inflation numbers for July of 2021, and they are the highest that they have been since 2011. And this comes on the heels of an election announcement by Justin Trudeau just this last Sunday, and it's going to create some issues for the Liberal government, especially when it comes to the discussion around cost of living. And we're going to discuss exactly what's gone up in prices, what provinces have been the hardest hit, and what this all means for you down the road. But before we get into it, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers. Yes, if you are new here, one lucky subscriber is going to win $5,000 just for subscribing to this channel. It's free, it's easy, it's definitely worth it. All you have to do to be entered is hit that subscribe button. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit: product, penalty, price, in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss the July inflation numbers, and specifically the CPI hitting 3.7, which is the highest it has been since 2011. Now, this is still relatively low compared to what's going on in the US, but it comes at a time when we have just had an election called, and there's going to be some pretty big conversations around the topic of cost of living. And in a future video in the next couple of days, we're going to talk about the different political parties and their platforms with respect to real estate and with respect to housing. I'm going to preface those with I'm politically agnostic. I really don't care with respect to which party is chosen. I really just care what happens with respect to economics and the better good of Canadians. But I think it's going to be an interesting conversation over the next few days and the next few weeks with respect to cost of living and so on and so forth, because the amount of money that's been injected into the economy, combined with the spending of the Liberal government, combined with supply shortages, combined with just a crazy time, has led to pretty high numbers when it comes to inflation. And this is especially true with respect to the baseline effects that happened as a result of basically the cost of everything going down last March and April, when pretty much the entire economy was on lockdown. So I want to jump right in here. I want to show you a few things. First and foremost, the headline. Yes, this is BNN Bloomberg. Canadian inflation jumps to 3.7%, creating trouble for Trudeau. I don't know how much trouble this is going to cause him, but it is definitely going to be the number one topic when it comes to the election. And this is really something that it's going to come down to how well the Liberals can explain the baseline effects, and that inflation is probably not as high as people think it is, versus how the Conservatives and the NDPs are going to be able to paint the picture that the Liberals have done a poor job in managing and handling the economy. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation there. We'll see what unfolds in the next few weeks, but let's pop right in here and show you the Stats Canada numbers and whatnot. And this is going right into the Consumer Price Index. This is what's called the daily. It comes out from Stats Canada on a daily basis, and today's highlights is obviously CPI. You can see right there 3.7% is the 12-month change. And then if you go and you take a look, there's a whole bunch of highlights here with respect to what's going on in the economy. Things that are outlined are gasoline prices that are quite high. Homeowner replacement costs for houses are quite significant right now, and prices for durable goods. They point out Alberta's electricity bills are significantly higher, and so on and so forth. You can go in and take a quick read of that if you like, but I'm going to jump into some of the highlights here. And specifically, I'm going to talk about what is going on with respect to different areas of the economy and what is actually going up quite high with respect to prices. So if you take a look at the chart that is on your screen here, and you look at all the items with respect to the Consumer Price Index, what you can see is that prices have gone up considerably, and they've gone up pretty considerably compared to June of last year. In fact, every single sector of the economy has gotten more expensive, with the exception of clothing and footwear and alcohol, tobacco, and recreational cannabis. Everything else other than those two categories is more expensive. You can see that obviously transportation is leading the way when it comes to higher prices, as is shelter. No surprise with either of those. Now, one thing to watch out for in the coming weeks is and coming months for that matter, is usually gasoline and electricity is a leading indicator. So as those things start to go up in price, it trickles down through the rest of the economy as transportation and basically costs of operating businesses and operating households becomes more and more expensive. So these are things that are going to lead to higher inflation numbers. Now, here's the thing though, what could happen and what will likely happen in the coming months is we're probably going to see some of the supply chain issues come out of the market. Now, there's still things happening in China. There's still things happening across the world when it comes to supply issues. And when I mentioned China, I mentioned one of their ports that had a single case of COVID and they shut down the entire port for a period of 7 days. These are the types of things that are leading to the supply chain issues and ultimately higher prices. We're seeing higher prices in transportation. A lot of this is led by gasoline, but it's also led by higher prices to automobiles, which is the direct result of the lack of semiconductors because of the lockdowns that prevented semiconductors from being made. So you're seeing a lot of things happening here with respect to supply chain issues, but you're also seeing just general higher prices with respect to energy and whatnot, which means as we come into the fall, we could see and we should see inflation numbers start to trend down, but we may see them stay fairly high for the next couple of months. Now, when we go in and we take a look at some of the more interesting data here, and one of the things I'd like to come in and show you is this consumer price index data visualization tool. Now, this is a really cool tool. If we zoom it out and we take a look at all basket items, so this is everything that is made up in the CPI, what you'll see is that if you live in provinces like Prince Edward Island or Nova Scotia or Newfoundland, what you're seeing is higher prices there and greater inflation than what you're seeing in other parts of Canada. If you look at Prince Edward Island, for example, inflation is at 6.1%. If you look at Alberta, it is 3.7%. Look at British Columbia, it's 3.1%. And if you look at Ontario, it's 3.5%. So what this means is that if you live in one of the smaller eastern provinces, you're actually seeing higher inflation than the rest of the country. And this is, I believe, largely attributed to the fact that there has been lockdowns in those provinces. It's been very hard to travel to those provinces. And now what we're seeing is as those provinces open up, we're seeing greater demand and ultimately leading to higher prices. Especially in those provinces, the travel industry has gone up significantly. This was pointed out in the Stats Canada Daily Digest. Now, if we want to drill down a little bit more onto what's expensive, we can take a look at things like shelter, and we can take a look at things like mortgage interest. And as you can see, mortgage interest costs are down quite significantly. But that being said, when you look at the cost of actual properties and so on and so forth, so homeowners replacement costs, you can see that those are up quite significantly. And that is leading to, obviously, the higher prices in the shelter section of the economy. And if you look at overall shelter costs, what you can see is in Prince Edward Island, the shelter costs are up almost 11%. If you take a look in Alberta, they're up 4.3%, and then Ontario, 5.2%, and British Columbia, 5.6%. So that is one of the things that is leading to higher inflation across the country, is the higher cost of goods. Now, if you go and you take a look at things like food, and this is a really good example of what you can see with respect to supply chain issues. Well, if you take a look at something like meat, where there has been supply chain issues, where plants have been shut down due to COVID in both pork, poultry, and beef production, well, what you see is that with respect to meat, you've got pretty high price increases across the country. This is because of lack of supply, which is causing increases in prices. Now, if you move into things like vegetables, so we'll jump over here into vegetables, what you can see is the opposite is happening. You're actually seeing lower prices across the board for vegetables. In fact, if you are a vegetarian or vegan, it has gotten significantly cheaper to eat over the last year. And the reason why is because there's more supply. There's been better growing conditions. There's been more production. And as a result, you're seeing lower prices in vegetables pretty much across the board. So really interesting contrast here. And when you look at food purchased from stores overall, what you see is this is pretty balanced. Different provinces have higher levels, but for the most part, what you're seeing is that the inflation numbers for food are balanced at around that 2% mark, or at least when you look at Canada on a nationwide perspective, at about 1%, which is lower than inflation overall. So what you're ending up finding is this scenario where you've got lower costs for food, but you've got higher costs for things like transportation and whatnot. And if we go and we take a look at things like transportation and we look at things like the cost of gasoline, what you can see is that gasoline is up significant in price across the country, 30 to 40%. So all of this basically leads to the fact that we are seeing some sectors of the economy where we have supply chain issues be significantly more expensive than other sectors of the economy, like vegetable production, where there are no supply chain issues, and therefore we're seeing lower prices across the board. And this is ultimately coming out and creating a more balanced effect. But obviously we have fairly high inflation at 3.7%, and that needs to be balanced out. And my guess is that it will be balanced out as supply comes back online and as more regular months are being tallied in August, September, October, November, and December. So what this all means for you is, yes, if you live in Eastern Canada, things have gotten significantly more expensive for you. If you live in other parts of Canada, they've gotten marginally more expensive for you. But at the end of the day, what is ultimately going to happen is we're going to probably see inflation come down. We're seeing the Federal Reserve Bank in the US start to pull back their stimulus. At least they're talking about it this week. We'll probably see announcements on that in the next week or so. And ultimately what that is going to lead to is hopefully more jobs in the economy, more production, and ultimately a more level playing field when it comes to those inflation numbers. Now, as far as interest rates go, I think we're a long way from seeing higher interest rates. We are still seeing variable rates come down. We're seeing fixed rates stay fairly steady. They should be coming down given what's happening in the bond market, but they aren't quite yet. Hopefully in the next week or two, we'll start to see those fixed rates start to trend down again. And then going into the fall market, we should see, at least in the real estate industry, things start to level out. We'll still see low interest rates, which will hopefully mean we'll have a little bit more of a normal market. But that's what's happening with respect to inflation. It's been one crazy month. It's been, a really, really, really big month with respect to things opening up, the economy opening up, which is why we're seeing higher prices across the board. And ultimately, I think what that means for Canadians is we need to be getting a little bit smarter with our money, a little bit smarter with how we make our purchasing decisions. And ultimately, if you're looking at getting into the real estate market, if you're looking at buying a home, we need to get really smart about the interest rate decisions we're making, and particularly taking advantage of those super low variable rates that will save you a significant amount of money as interest rates remain low, or at least until they start to go up. By the way, if you're looking at getting into the real estate market, if you're looking at borrowing money, we have a course called Secrets to Getting the Lowest Interest Rate. It covers everything from our variable rate mortgage strategy to how to negotiate with your bank, how to negotiate with a broker, how much margin's available, all the landmines and surprises that come with discount mortgages, and how to make sure that you avoid them. We've priced that course so low that you can guaranteed get 10 to 50 times your money back. We've put a special offer in there to make sure that you will guaranteed get 10 times your money back if you choose Mortgage 360 to get your mortgage. And ultimately, we've also put a 50% discount coupon code in there so that you can save even more. So if you are heading on that journey of getting a mortgage, go ahead, link in the description below. We'd sincerely like to join you on your journey to getting a mortgage. And if not, at least if you found this video useful, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video, and don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers.